Hello, Deepa here at the Creative Mystic Podcast. And today I'm going to talk about finding your purpose. Now, finding your purpose always starts with understanding first what are those blocks that prevent you from knowing what your purpose is. It's really easy to keep wishing you knew what your purpose was, but you have to understand what's blocking you from knowing. So it starts off with the programming you get when you were young. Everybody has a subconscious, conscious, and superconscious mind. And in our subconscious mind, we're given a lot of programming when we're young, starting from, before the age of 7. Everything you heard, saw, experienced, overheard, I would say that overheard, is creating your programming. And what I have seen that 98% of society is programmed with is to do what's practical, logical, safe, secure, and what you can afford. And so that programming of what's practical and logical, safe, secure, and what you can afford prevents you from actually doing what you really need to do to know what your purpose is. And that's to start coming from what's true in your heart. And because we've been so programmed with doing what's practical, what's logical, what's responsible, what's safe, it doesn't even enter our mind sometimes that it's possible to act on those little inklings, those little ideas you get, those little like, oh, ahas or feelings of like pull of something that you feel drawn to because somewhere in your programming it says that's not logical, that's practical, not practical. How you can make money doing that, and if you're wanting to have like a nice standard of living, a lot of times maybe something you're drawn to in your mind, you think you can't make a lot, and so that prevents you from actually acting on it. I know I grew up with a lot of beliefs around being responsible, what made you a good person, good daughter. Those are all programmings of like what's practical, what's logical, what's responsible, because those are the kinds of things that prevent you from knowing what your purpose is, from finding your purpose, because you know what it is deep inside. It's just been covered up with that programming of could be, like to be a good daughter, you have to do these responsible things of taking care of your parents and making money so that you can pay enough money to take care of them, or the programming of what's practical, of like, doing only practical jobs, like everybody's been programmed, or not everybody, but a lot of people have been programmed that you should go to college. I was, and I think going to college is great because going to college is like a first step for a lot of teenagers to step out on their own without like necessarily completely doing it on their own. At least that's the way it was for me. I had parents that paid for my college education. I went away for college, but came back in the summer and worked and earned money. But it was like a first step on venturing out on my own. So I think, going to college is great. But I was programmed from the time I was a little kid. My mom used to say to me, "Don't you want to go to college? And don't you want to go to UC Berkeley?" So by the time I got to be a teenager, there wasn't any other thought that I was going to any other college other than UC Berkeley. And so I only applied to 2 colleges because my parents programmed me with, or my mother did, with going to UC Berkeley. Now, your programming might have been as like specific as that. It might have just been you going to college. And again, I think going to college is great, but it's not always for everybody because sometimes people are meant to, be a tradesman or something because they're not really wired to go into the educational system. Sometimes somebody's meant to, be an actor. And yes, you can go to college for acting, but you don't have to go to college to be a successful actor. There's lots of successful actors out there who haven't gone to college. And so that practical, logical thinking often prevents you from being able to act on those inklings, those desires of something that really speaks to you. But your programming says that you can't make enough money. That's not logical. Who can make a living at that? And the thing is, I tell people is nowadays with the internet, you can make money doing almost anything. There are content creators on YouTube who make money teaching people things. There are content creators who just share their lives in vans and make money. And there's, online trainings you can do and programs you can create. And so the window is really big. The doorways are really large on the amount of ways that you can go out and create a business nowadays. But you won't do it if your programming says that's not logical, or the responsible thing is to do is to go get a real job. Like I was watching a YouTube channel that I watch, and these people make money off of just creating these YouTube channels and sharing their lives of what they're doing, where they're traveling, things like that. And one of their contractors who was working on their house, when he happened to call him, says, "Oh, well, I have a real job." Like what they did wasn't a real job. And so that programming of that gentleman who said that about a real job would never let himself go do something like a content creator, where these people make a good living, make good money creating and sharing their lives and creating videos that people want to watch. And so it's really about, like, how do you change that programming? Because that programming started when you were young, before the age of 7. And I don't want you to feel bad about this programming, because it happened, like I said, most of it before the age of 7, before you had the conscious ability to say, no, I don't want that. Oh, no, I don't believe that. Because everything you just heard or experienced or saw programmed you. So if you heard your parents saying stuff like money doesn't grow on trees, or we can't afford that, you get programmed with we can't afford that, money doesn't grow on trees. Or you think, okay, in order to be a good daughter, I have to go to college and do the career my parents want me to do. So some people have generations of people who are doctors or lawyers, and even though that person may not really feel fulfilled as that doctor lawyer, they did it because, oh, this is what they were programmed with. This is what we do in our family. We become doctors and lawyers. And that could be something as not a doctor or lawyer. It could be that you're, a blue collar worker, that your family programmed you to be a coal worker or something. But it's about that programming of, like, what are the possibilities, and the programming keeps you, like, looking through a really small lens, like a horse with blinders on, when there's actually this whole world of opportunity out there when you take the blinders off. And the only way you can really take the blinders off is to change the programming. So that's one of the things I do with my coaching, is to really help people learn how to reprogram their subconscious mind, so that they can start to see the possibilities, not just the possibilities, but the opportunities that are right there in front of them. Because what happens is, when you have the programming of that's not practical, logical, or responsible, you might have this clear idea that, oh, I would really love to go, like the Wright brothers had an idea of going out and, making a plane that would fly, and everybody thought they were crazy, but they actually had, the ability to, like, ignore what everybody else was believing and go out and do it. And so you want to be able to, like, start to recognize when you're limiting yourself, because the limitations are what are showing you signs of the programming. Okay. Because whenever we limit ourselves, like, oh, I can't do that because I'm too old or too young or not the right gender or, the right ethnicity, then that, prevents you from knowing your purpose. And so you have to really be open to going, okay, let me start to be aware of where I'm limiting myself, because those limitations are giving me an indication of my programming of what's stopping me from knowing what's true in my heart, from, being able to recognize that there's something else I really want to do. And I know most people, when they know that they don't know what their purpose is, they know they're not happy with what they're doing, but they don't often know what they want to do. And the reason being is because of the programming. Okay. And that programming keeps you making choices from the programming, not what's true in your heart. And so you have to start to become aware of when you're doing, or defaulting to, I should say, the subconscious programming, and then be able to move yourself out to check in with yourself and, like, put your hands on your heart and say, well, what's true for me? Because how you start to know what your purpose is you have to start practicing the muscle of following your heart's desire, of following your truth, because that gives you the signals, I should say, of your purpose. See, following what's true in your heart, following your truth, your true heart's desires, are what starts to reveal where your purpose is, what you're here to do, what you're here to really have, and not just keep up with the Joneses, but what really is important to you. What do you really value? What is the truth in your heart, even if it sounds totally illogical or impractical. Like when I grew up in a really non-spiritual family, and so for me to step into this spiritual business that we have, it was challenging for me because the program, I was going up against the program and saying, no, that's like not really me. Like I'm this competent person who was a sales rep, a straight commission sales rep, an investment person. And I had to like really let that go, because even though I had done those careers, I'd been on the spiritual path for a long time. And that was like my focus. Every morning, every evening, I did my spiritual practices. It was the most important thing to me, but I had a problem stepping into it because of the programming I got. And I was really programmed with what to do that was to do what was practical, logical, and here's the big one for me, responsible. What made me a good daughter, what made me a responsible person. And that stopped me from, because I felt like, oh, if I'm responsible, I'm going to do a job that will bring in, a certain amount of money. And if I'm responsible, and in my mind, there was these jobs are only these certain kinds of jobs. And I didn't believe at first that I could make a lot of money doing our spiritual business, of which is the farthest thing from the truth now that I've gotten through that programming. And so I had to retrain myself to how to step into what's true in my heart, to make it a practice to check in with myself. What's true for me today? And it's still something I have to remember to do, because that programming, I've reprogrammed myself a lot from where I used to be. But when I go to that next level, that programming sometimes, or a different part of the programming can come up. And so it's one of the biggest things I help people do is, how do we change your programming? And it really gets changed from repetition and experience. And the more impactful the experience is, the faster it can help change your programming. And so if you want to talk about it more, feel free to reach out to me. I can talk to you a little bit more about how it works. But there's the other thing that is your biggest block to knowing your purpose, is codependency. Codependency is when you worry more about what other people think, and you worry about what other people are going to do if you don't do a certain thing or you do a certain thing. And that cuts you off from doing what's true in your heart, this codependency, because you feel like, you have to go do this thing to help another person, even though you don't want to, or you feel like you have to do these certain things, or maybe you're a people pleaser. That would be codependency. If you're a people pleaser, where you do stuff for other people and you don't really want to, or it's going against what, really is what's true for you, but you do it because it makes them happy and you don't want the conflict. That's codependency. That's people pleasing, codependency. If you're worried about what they think and you don't do what you really want to do because you're worried they're going to have a negative reaction, they're going to get angry, and you're not comfortable with any of that, that blocks you from knowing what your purpose is, from you finding your purpose, because your purpose is within you. See, all you have to do is turn within and start coming from what's true, and you'll start to let it out. Okay. Now that sounds really easy to say and can be much more challenging for people to do, because why? The programming keeps you going back to the old thing. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen yourself go out and you start to do something like you think is heading towards your purpose, and then you catch yourself going right back to the old behavior, and that's that programming taking over, because whenever you're stressed, extremely tired, you default to your subconscious mind, which is where your programming resides. And so that's why sometimes you'll see yourself get a little bit of gumption towards your purpose, a little bit of energy, and then you'll see yourself going back to not, because of that programming. And so it's a process to change the programming. It's a process to change the habit of codependency and the fear about what other people think, and and you acting on what's true. And so that has to be looked at first, for finding your purpose. Okay. And the biggest thing to finding your purpose is beginning to make your choices by what's true in your heart. What's your true heart's desire? And so I really recommend people just actually putting their hands on their heart physically, because it brings the attention there. And it's not so much your physical heart, it's like your heart chakra. And if you're not familiar with the chakras, there's 7 major ones in your up your astral spine, which is in front of your physical spine. But those chakras are energy centers, and it's about like the energy of your truth. It comes from your heart chakra. And so by putting your hands in your heart and kind of checking in with yourself, what's true in my heart? It can start to be a new practice for you. Now, it's not going to change by doing it one time. It's kind of like working out. In order to develop the muscle, you have to do it continually, repetitively. And the more, like I said, impactful you can create the experience of doing something, that will actually reprogram yourself even faster. Now, it's one of the hardest things I find for people to sustain. That's why most people work with a coach when they're wanting to change this programming. And you may be somebody who has stepped into your purpose at some level, but you feel like there's a next level, like a bigger step, a bigger level that you're supposed to go to. And you can see that you're just not getting there. And that's, again, because of the programming, and could be because of the codependency. At that point, if you've stepped into it at some level, but not at the biggest level you can, it's usually the programming. Now, here's the thing. People are usually looking for finding their purpose in their life, as if like there's one purpose. And I try to tell people, oh, there's not one purpose. We're meant to be growing. I always say there's the law of more life operating in all of our lives. And so we're supposed to be continuing to grow and expand. And so we have more than one purpose. At one point in life, when you're 25, you have one purpose. And maybe when you're 30 and you have kids, one of your purposes might be to become the best mom in the world. And then when those kids grow up and they're out on their own, then your time is freed up, and now another purpose is there. And often, even when you are a mom, there's sometimes a purpose that needs to happen while you're a mom. And so it's about, how do you start to embrace this path, this process of your purposes, because there's more than one purpose in your life. And so, how do you know if you're ready to go to the next purpose? If you feel like you've done one, let's say maybe it's being a mom, or maybe you've done a certain level of success in this certain industry, but now you feel like there's something else, but you don't know what. It's that feeling of like something's missing, tells you it's time to go to the next purpose, or step into your purpose if you haven't at all. It could be that you're feeling bored, like maybe, oh, this has all been good, but now I'm kind of getting kind of bored with it. That's telling you it's time to go into that next purpose. It could be that the feeling like maybe you actually love the purpose, but somehow you're feeling like, wow, this is supposed to be, like I'm supposed to bring it to have a bigger impact, in the world. And so it's supposed to be bigger, of what I'm doing right now. And so those are all indications that it's time to like kind of step into that next purpose, or next level of the purpose. All right. So thank you for tuning in. And if you have any questions or anything, I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to send an email or comment. Remember, greatness is within you. It's time to let it out.